And before we get to anything else with regards to the film, I was just kind of curious what inspired you to name it the way that you did.
Well, it was more than inspiration. It was an exercise of forceps because it began for a long time. We were shooting in this village for 5 years. And for a long time, it was called the last year of Congo Mirador, thinking that that this help would not ever arrive to the village, you know. Mm-hmm. And then at the very end, when we came to the process of after the rough cut was there, and we were in the process of shaping, the cotton as well, like the understanding on how we would communicate it and so on. This name was not the best. Well, we considered back then that it was not the best. So then we were looking for other options, and it was clear to us that it was important to have the word Venezuela there, mm-hmm. because it's a story that is allegoric of the whole country. So then we were like looking for ways, and we came to the name in Spanish, which is Érase una vez en Venezuela, yeah. And of course, when you translate that, it's once upon a time in Venezuela, and it seemed to me like a little tribute to the tradition of Westerns, in the sense, mm-hmm. that this place has a bit of a Western type of look from, like it has like this air of this kind of environment, and as a story is, instead of this story of pioneers, they begin something is like the epic of the destruction, more or less. And so then all of this somehow came, but this was in the last 6 months of the whole process. That, as I told you, it took 5 years to shoot, and 2 years in the editing. So there was an overlapping between shoot and editing, but it was a long process. So then it was like at the very end, like, no, something has to come.
What was the original inspiration behind this movie?
Well, first, like from a rational point of view, like since 2008, I began to occupy myself in looking for stories that happened in the industrial area of the oil extraction in Venezuela, mm-hmm. and in this lake, and it's always like a question for many Venezuelan artists to understand what it has meant for us as a culture and so on. So, and back then I began to shoot some documentaries for television, like Latin American television and so on. And with the time, I began to make like more and more friends in this village, and it was just the looks of it, of this place, and this kind of feeling of, how to say, for me as well exotic, mm-hmm. The being there, and it's this mix of being in a place that is, on one side, a bit magic, and at the same time a bit like repulsive as well, because, well, several reasons, and as well a bit edgy, because there are many. It's an area that is very near the border with Colombia, and it's, for instance, there is paramilitarism and so on. So, and the place in itself, it was just like full of stories. And the fact that it's iconically, like as it is, with these houses on top of the water that are similar to this idea that one has of Venice, you know, that, mm-hmm. Venezuela is founded with this spirit of being like the little Venice. When the conquerors came, Cristobal Colón came, he mentioned that this was like a little Venice, because the first thing he saw was this kind of villages. So, and all of these things came together, and it was developing over the time. But the very, 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 very first thing, like back in those years was that, like to investigate, to research in those areas that were around the oil industry, to to develop stories. And yeah,
Mhm.
at the end, there I've shot like two docus for the telly, one short, and then this film.
Was there anybody that you came across while during the making of this film that was uncomfortable with their story being told and the story of this village being told?
That I became uncomfortable with the whole, or how?
Just in terms of the the people living in the village, did you get any pushback as far as people just being a bit uncomfortable with being on camera, wanting to?
Mm, I mean, I have several stories. So the main one in that area is the stories that are actually not told, which are the stories of the paramilitaries. This village was
Mhm.
at some point, I mean, something common in those areas that where the government doesn't really have a sovereignty, and that means as well in terms of. Yeah, they are like a bit of abandoned areas, yeah, and it is very common that armed groups, paramilitary groups, take them. And in the local, in the Latin America, when you talk about paramilitaries, normally it means, so there are like the so-called in English the left-wing paramilitaries, and the other ones are like more right-wing paramilitaries. But out of this dichotomy, there are several armed groups, and they enter into these places, and for instance, they charge people for them to look after, to be looked after. So
Mhm.
slowly they take more and more spaces. And when I began working there, this place was not. It didn't have this problem, but with the time, and with this neglectancy that was there was a point when there was a murder there
Mm.
of a fisherman, that a guy that would not do anything to no one, a guy that was a guy loved by everyone,
Mhm.
old guy, and then he turned up being all chopped into pieces in the floating in the water.
Mm.
And then the people got well, the goal of that is exactly to scare people. And then they accepted these guys, the paramilitaries, and then they were living there. Actually, most of them would sleep in the same house where we were sleeping.
Mhm.
And then with the time, was at the beginning, we always had a distance, and there was like a kind of respect. But these are guys not to mess about. They are not playing, no. And there's lots of a bit of how to say, of it's very easy for them to assassinate, to murder.
Mhm.
So, and it was not whatever, but they were young guys. And with the years, because this sharing the same places took years in this process. And after a year more or less, these guys that were young, I mean, the boss was a guy, as to say, my age, but the ones working were kids, really,
Mhm.
were 20 years old. And they liked that what we were doing. They liked the cameras and so on, and they wanted to be filmed. They wanted to make their hip hop videos or whatever. And of course, it was tempting for us. But the leader of the village, who was the owner of this house, we were asleep. We were living in her house. At some
Mhm.
point of the shooting, we were living in her house, and she forbid us from that. And
Mm.
because, I mean, because there was the risk was hers and of everybody involved. So
Mhm.
So yeah, we got like only one shot of one of those guys that later on was killed himself.
Mm.
His nickname was Fury. So we had only this thing of furia in Spanish, and yeah, so then that was the main forbidden area.
Hmm. What were some of the logistical challenges that you came across when it came to making this movie?
Well, there is not drinkable water.
Mm.
Yeah, then we had to bring all the water as to cook in big 5 liters or more bottles, and each one of these fishing ships we used to hire two, and one of them was filled up with water, and this is the navigation is 3 hours navigation time from the port, nearest port. And the oil, and most of all nowadays, the oil there, it is crazy expensive. It can even get $3 per liter. And back then, this kind of own market was happening. Was not so expensive, but it was a thing. So then, each week we would send for more water because we needed it to cook, etc. The other thing that, I mean, is uncomfortability, but at the same time, it has its wonders. Is the theme on how to wash ourselves, because there in this lagoon where they are, it is very polluted, as there is not how do you say, sewage waters. There's no sewage canals there, so we would have to go to another. Let me just explain the geography there. There is the main lake, yeah, that is like a sea, really. It's enormous. And in the delta of the river, there are many lagoons of some of them of really like clear water with a, and this is one of those lagoons where these houses are. And the problem is that the lagoon became a swamp at the end because of this, because of change in the climate. That the river was bringing more sediment. Yeah. So this lagoon, it was not possible to go further and to have a swim there to wash yourself. So then we would drive to another lagoon that is like hidden somewhere there, and we would have to go with the feet like in the water to um, to push away like these little alligators. There are like a small, like 1.5 meter small crocodiles or alligators. And we did that to jump into the water and to swim and to wash ourselves. That's how we would do. So yeah, there are these kind of things that are challenging, but at the same time, it's an experience. And about the for instance, to eat proteins there, we would either bring dry meat. At the beginning, we wouldn't like to eat their fish, but at the end, we did eat it. I did eat it a lot, and because we didn't have where to keep it is a sin to keep their meat in a refrigerator. Because these are hours of electricity, and we had our own plant with oil, but this we had to ration. We couldn't have just a fridge there running the whole day. 3 weeks. So that's why we had these strategies. So sometimes we would they chase a lot, and so then sometimes we would eat as well from what they, for instance, capybaras. or things that are less correct to eat, but we did eat them. You know what I mean? The same alligators. You know what I mean? Um, Not very good too, because they are not in the area. They are a bit like low in. They have really no, I wouldn't say exterminate them, but they have brought down the population big time, because they do that. No, they chase a lot. And what else about the logistics and everything that has to do with security is a theme. So then we would not profit from the services of these paramilitaries, for instance, but there was with us this family of they are 13 kids, and three of them would work with us all the time. One of them was a police back then, and he left the police because he didn't like this life anymore after working with us. He wanted to become a filmmaker. But these are guys that were always with guns. So then so it was important to have somebody whom you would really trust, because because basically there are several. Everybody has guns on their own, and in all those years, it didn't happen to us anything to do with criminality, which is quite exceptional, I would say, because it's quite common that when you are navigating in the lake itself, in the big sea, there is robbery of these engines, and they leave you there in some oil drill, standing until somebody rescue you. These are quite common stories. So then this is like essential to know your ways to there. Yeah.
What was the most surprising thing that you took away from this project?
Well, first, what has to do with my own history in all the last 2 decades in Venezuela, which is to do with the polarization, a political polarization. When I began the project, I did it with from a feeling very simple, like from a feeling of anger, I would say, and of the frustration of many years of what it began being a slow process of deterioration that really drastic in the last years. And anger as well, because I mean, the country the families got really divided. So I was really angry with the people that still supported the government, no? And overall, in a moment in which it's become a dictatorship. And the way in which I saw this leader, Tamara, I began seeing her in one way, and at the end, it is a little bit as it is in the film right now. It kind of, also to me, it changed the whole perspective, and as well the whole understanding on what has happened to us. So and it was kind of interesting because it's seen from the grassroots out. It came to me the understanding that of course when the society is so divided, when we get so divided, is when we become more vulnerable.
Yeah.
And this is what happened to us. Normally, if you see like from a more rational way, isn't it? But to really understand that, this guy that is in the other side with another political point of view. So first of all, there is no reason why to take it so bloody serious, to a point that you stop talking for years or for your whole life to a brother, for instance, which is what has happened in the families there. That whole families are really divided and doing damage to each other, and to taking it to a point that is like on an edge to a civil war.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how we didn't have civil war. We have something worse than a civil war, which is like this devastation. But it's very strange that it didn't happen because all the elements really have been there.
Mm-hmm.
So then this is really like the main thing that I bring with me as a human being.
Mm. Well, thank you very much for talking to me. One of the things that really got out of the movie was the way that this village does basically become a reflection of the country itself, or at least the country that we outside of Venezuela sort of see it. And I really was I was really quite moved and affected by the fact that you basically are watching this village essentially die, and it's just such a haunting thing. And the fact that you see all of these people, they're just basically moving their houses elsewhere, and you kind of hope that they'll maybe be able to find sort of the life and the sense of community that they once had there. And
Yeah.
it's really a lovely movie.
Nice, thank you very much. Interesting that you are you from where are you now?
Georgia. So I was actually cover
What-
yeah, I was just north of Atlanta. So yeah.
Excellent. And have you been ever been to Latin America?
I've not. No.
Okay, that's interesting that you that is spoken to you, someone is communicated to you.
Mhm.
Excellent.
But yes, thank you very much for talking to me. I'm glad we were able to set this up.